The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast, College Edition, featuring Mason Beckman and Tristan Warner. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Welcome in, wrestling fans. You are now dialed into the PA Power College Podcast. As Jason Bryant of the Mat Talk Podcast Network said, I'm Tristan Warner, joined by my main man, as always, Mason Beckman, a.k.a. Beck Diggity. Mason, episode 17, how we doing?
Good, man. Had a really fun weekend out at Ironman, covering the high school level with Jeff Upson. Got to call some matches on Flow Wrestling. Ironman itself, as Nate Brown will tell you, Ironman is my favorite high school event. It's such an incredible event. And one of the cool things out there was the podcast is gaining momentum, man. Had a few different assistant or head coaches of prominent Division I programs, actually come up and talk about the podcast and say they'd like to come on as guests. So you'll be seeing those in the coming weeks. I'm not going to give any hints or any spoilers.
Allude to any of those or foreshadow any of those or give us some hints at least, 'cause I don't even know.
Well, I'll tell you off air.
Okay. All right. We'll keep the listeners tuned in so that way they keep listening.
Yeah, exactly. So all good things at Ironman. So getting into this past weekend, outstanding wrestlers of the weekend. My outstanding wrestler is actually two guys, but they occupied the same weight for the same school, so I'm going to roll with it. Lehigh freshman at 197. Yesterday, actually, we're recording this on Monday night. So yesterday, Lehigh wrestled at Penn and then at Drexel. So the two guys that wrestled for Lehigh, Jake Jacobson against Penn, Chris Weiler against Drexel. Both had top 20 guys. Jacobson goes out, gets a 3-0 win against the number 10 guy in the country, Frank Mattiace. Used a big ride out in the second, escape, ride time point. Just did the work. Really, really big win for Jacobson. And then the very next duel, they've been going back and forth, trying to figure out who's going to be the starter. A good problem for Coach Santoro to have. Chris Weiler goes out and majors the number 20 guy in the country, Stephen Loiseau from Drexel, which turned out to be a bonus point that Lehigh needed to win that duel on criteria. It's really a crazy duel on both sides, guys being hurt, bonus points kind of all over the place. We'll get into that a little bit later. So that's my OW of the weekend. Who do you got?
I was going to actually go with Jacobson, too, looking at the results. I mean, there was a lot of good PA guys that won matches this week or won multiple matches, but nobody really stood out to me as being OW material. I thought Jacobson was a good candidate because just a redshirt freshman, and I knew he was a PA state champ, but I honestly didn't know how good of caliber he was to wrestle in college. And he comes out and gets a 3-0 win over Frank Mattiace, who's been around for quite a few years last year. So I feel like that win alone vaults Jacobson into like a top 12 category, if he can even start at that weight. Like you said, Chris Weiler is also battling for that spot. Chris Weiler is actually a guy he's grown up wrestling in my local club around here, originally from Shippensburg, close by Cumberland Valley. But either way, I was going to go with Jacobson too. It's funny that you picked that. Not really since you're a Lehigh homer. But other guy, which this is going to allude right into our first challenge, Brick, probably more than anyone on this podcast so far this fall. But I'm going to have to go with Austin DeSanto for stepping out on the mat, anticipating wrestling the number 2 guy in the country. Didn't end up seeing him out there, but Austin DeSanto just for being fearless out there. And that leads to our first challenge, Brick Mason. I know this is going to be a heated topic for you, so take a deep breath and go ahead.
No, it's your brick. You throw it.
Well, I want to hear your details of what you know about Inside Scoop before I...
No, tell me what the brick is first.
The brick isn't necessarily at Scotty Parker or Lehigh whatsoever, actually. The brick is more just for those of you who didn't see, we'll kind of combine this challenge brick with one of our listener questions. One of our listener questions of big profile guys sitting out of college dual meets. Or correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is what the listener question was.
Yeah, you're right.
Sitting out of college dual meets against other top guys. Essentially, whereas at least back in the day when I remember as a kid, anytime two big dudes were going to wrestle each other in a college dual meet, they wrestled, it seemed like. These days, at least the last couple of years especially, it seems like almost more times than not, you'll watch a dual meet anticipating that so-and-so versus so-and-so at this weight, since that's the weight class the two wrestle, and maybe they're both top 10 guys, are going to wrestle each other, and it just seems like more times than not these days, somebody doesn't show up to wrestle, or somebody bumps up, or somebody is, quote, hurt, or is sick, or just doesn't wrestle. And in my opinion, it's really just put a damper on the excitement of college wrestling, really. I mean, you go to watch these dual meets, or you try to pull them on the Big Ten Network or something, and try to watch them, thinking that this is the big match you're going to see, and sure enough, somebody doesn't wrestle. So, I mean, it's disappointing. I don't know anything about this situation. Scotty Parker may very well be hurt or sick or something. You probably have more insight than me. Playing the sport right now that it's kind of turning me off to watching these matches.
So I totally agree. I think we've seen a lot more of guys not wrestling duels, but I think there's a multitude of reasons for it. Number one, guys do just get banged up. It's such a brutal sport. And I think coaches, the attitude has been shifting more and more, from a few decades ago, even maybe just a decade ago, that you just grinded through it, needed to wrestle every match. And Tom Ryan is a good example of a guy that he does not care what results are like during the year. Obviously, he's trying to win, but he is purely concerned with getting his guys best prepared for March. So I think that's part of it. I do think it detracts from dual meets, which is frustrating. And from a value standpoint, as far as bringing fans in and getting people, putting butts in seats and such, you could debate that all day. I see it from both sides, being so recently out of school and being someone that, not a lot of people know the different, I don't want to say injuries, but different things that plague me, between my shoulder, my knee, my ankle. I totally understand why coaches and athletes choose to rest and choose to take the time to get things healed, even though it might suck to miss dual meets. So, but on the flip side, as a fan now, purely as a fan, you want to see those matchups. You want to see Parker DeSanto, or go a couple weeks ago, you wanted to see a Parker Michich, right? So you want to see those matchups, but at the same time, you got to take a step back and understand that I would say 98% of the time there's a very legitimate reason behind it. So did that, the Parker DeSanto situation, I'm not going to divulge too many details as to what the specifics were, but in the Princeton duel, Scotty got hurt. Nothing too crazy serious, but something that he wasn't totally forthright with the severity of it, of his pain and everything, because he wanted to wrestle the Penn State duel. So Scotty goes out knowing that, he's a top 3 guy. It's a duel that he wants to wrestle. So he goes out, gets himself through the Penn State duel, also knowing, no disrespect to anyone, but it's not like against Penn State he was wrestling a top 5 guy, right? It was a match he knew he didn't have to be absolute peak form to get himself through. And in that match against Penn State, the injury issue that came up against Princeton was actually made worse from wrestling with it, right? Scotty was ruled out of the Drexel Penn duels an hour after he walked off the mat against Penn State. They hadn't even left the PPL Center yet, and Jack Foley, who's the trainer at Lehigh, had already said he's out at least for 2 weeks. So, And look, for anybody that's trying to sit here and say that Scotty or the Lehigh program in general would duck a guy, to remove my personal feelings, I just, first of all, Coach Santoro and the Lehigh program's track record would show that that's just not the MO. As well as look at the schedule. If it's a program that was trying to duck guys, they wouldn't go to Tempe to wrestle Arizona State. They wouldn't go to Blacksburg to wrestle Virginia Tech. You know what I mean? So I think that should kind of solve any issues about Lehigh ducking guys. If you're still dense enough to think that, then you're not really worth arguing with anyway.
Before we take too much time on this, my rant wasn't at all directed toward Parker. That was.
Oh no, that was kind of a.
I will say, just to play devil's advocate of what you said, I will say this is once again not having anything to do with Lehigh or Parker situation, but as a whole, where you say you think 98% of the time there's a legitimate reason, I would say more like maybe like 60 or 70% of the time, because I feel like a good portion of the time it's for reasons that are not physical injury. I feel like a lot of times, and I've even seen this happen with my own alma mater and some other teams I know close to me, even at the high school level, maybe, where guys are held out for more of a mental reason or a confidence reason, where let's protect the ranking, let's protect the seed, or let's not go up against this guy because if we have his confidence a little bit rattled, or he might throw off the groove that he's in, or the streak, where I can understand the physical injury thing sitting out, even though I myself wrestled through some pretty good injuries, and that was never my mindset. I can at least understand that, but I do have a problem with the whole let's protect the seed, let's for his confidence sake, let's sit him out for this duel. That I don't agree with. So
I'm
I see the 98%, but I'll agree with you on the physical injury one.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement. I mean, the percentage, maybe I was high, but I think you and I agree on the premise that if you're doing it purely to protect a ranking or anything of that nature, I think that's garbage. Go wrestle. But if it's a guy that's having serious, legitimate issues, any kind of health issue, mental health is every bit as much of a thing. And I'm not talking about, you're kind of in a rut. That's not a mental health issue. Kids suffer mental health, there's a lot that goes on in life, right? So if it's any kind of health issue, or a kid is like very, very sick or something like that, I guess that goes back to physical health. If it's anything like that, I get it. I totally get it. You got to do what you got to do. So, that said, my challenge, Britt. What?
Yeah, I was gonna say, before we get on to the results, did you want to throw something out about Richie Lewis? I see you got him listed here.
I was gonna throw it out at Richie Lewis for a couple different reasons. Number one, been bouncing back and forth between 57 and 65. Obviously he's struggling to make 57. So I guess my challenge break there would be, pick one and run with it, let the lineup settle in and just go wrestle. Richie Lewis is a world champ, right? He's going to be all right wherever he's at. The other thing was the match against Marinelli, man. It was underwhelming, and I totally get it. I get that Marinelli wrestles extremely hard, and Marinelli's very good. But a guy like Lewis, that was not the type of performance you expected, was not the type of guy that I would have expected to hit the wall, seemingly hit the wall the way he did. So, the challenge break would just be that, challenging Richie Lewis was, that's not the guy I thought he was. And I still don't think that's the best form of Richie Lewis. So, would like to see that match again, maybe with Richie Lewis in his, Super Saiyan final form. But, they're in the same conference. That's a match we could see later on down the road. So results, just to buzz through some things. There's few ones to touch on. Pitt went down to Morgantown, fell to West Virginia.
10, I think it was. Pretty convincing win for West Virginia. I was a little surprised to see that.
So was I. But there's another challenge, Brick, I wanted to throw related to this duel. West Virginia gave up 2 team points for bench misconduct. I'm throwing the whole challenge, Brick, on that because for whatever reason, like, what are you doing giving up 2 bench misconduct points?
Still winning by 14 points, though.
It doesn't matter.
No, I just thought I'd throw that out there. I'm saying that's even more impressive. And that's with 2 team points. That's a matchup. Just, without even studying the lineup, just on paper, I'm thinking in my head Pitt's winning that. But
yeah, I agree with, but that's just ridiculous. I don't know. I like, how does that happen? That's just because you gotta do something pretty stupid and pretty out of line to get popped for a team point in a duel, for a bench misconduct, and they did it twice. So yeah, that said, not the best outing for Pitt. We kind of know they're in a bit of a rebuilding phase, but although last week's guest, Nick Zanetta, did pick up a win, so our guys, the guys that have been on this podcast for the most part have done, they're doing pretty well. So I like to think we're good luck charms. I would agree. Lehigh and Penn, we kind of touched on it. The only thing worth noting that we haven't touched on in that dual meet, Ryan Price rolled an ankle, kind of just in a funky situation, and a fight not to give up a reversal. Don't really know the diagnosis. Was told it's not, it's not season ending or anything. It'll be a few weeks, but we will see Price again. The end, and Price's default was actually the only bout that Lehigh lost. So that was a 41-6 dual meet. Lehigh Drexel was a wild one. It was 2020. Lehigh wins. I don't know if it was 2020 on criteria or you get a point for criteria. Okay, yeah. So you actually get a point for criteria then. Okay, so Lehigh wins 21-20 on criteria. We talked about the no Scotty Parker. DeSanto gets a tech of Nick Farrow. Darian Cruz and Zach Fuentes was a close. It was a 3-2 match. Drexel scored 8 bonus points. 2 at 33 with a tech. Cole Walter for Lehigh at 65 scores the first 5 takedowns of that bout. And then they get into a weird situation, and I don't know if Cole got hurt or just hit a brick wall. I was told he fractured a rib, but I don't want to use that as an excuse. But there was a very distinct point in that match where Cole's got the first 5 takedowns of it, and then the wheels just fell off the bus and gave up the next 4 and then got decked. This bout actually started at 74. So then the other one was an 84. Oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the name of the kid from Drexel. I really apologize. May have been. But anyway, kid from Drexel was wrestling the Lehigh backup, Paul Dunn, and close match, like a 1 or 2 point match, and Dunn gets tilted, and I think it was one of those moments where he kind of went like, crap, and relaxed, and the Drexel kid kind of jammed into him and stuck him in it. So Drexel with 2 pins and a tech. Majors for Lehigh from Weiler, who we talked about, and from Luke Karam. So those two freshmen from Lehigh really stepped up big, got the bonus points they needed. Lehigh wins on the criteria, 6-4 bouts. So crazy dual meet. The atmosphere in Philly there at Drexel seemed to be awesome. It's a program. They're doing good things. So, maybe a wake-up call for Lehigh, banged up Lehigh team, missing Parker and Price. But on the flip side of it, it really speaks to Drexel and what they're doing. Other just random, Pennsylvania guys scattered throughout different schools. Mikey Kemmer, Zach Zavatsky, Andrew Dunn. So Kemmer for Iowa gets a couple techs. Zavatsky and Dunn for Virginia Tech. They both pick up wins on the weekend. Luke Pletcher stays undefeated for Ohio State. Ethan Lezak gets back on the horse, teched his guy. Jake Gunning for Buffalo, he gets a win. Hayden Hidlay, Pete Renda for the NC State Wolfpack, they also pick up wins on the weekend. So Pennsylvania natives pretty much all over the country, man, picking up wins this weekend. And then really the last result of the weekend was PSACs. So, Tristan, I'll kind of let you run through this.
Okay, yeah, so the PSAC championship, Lock Haven obviously wins the title for the first time, breaks Edinburgh's streak of, I think, 6 straight years. That's huge things coming from from Lock Haven.
See, I'm wearing off on you. I'm rubbing off on you.
Just brainwashing me, if anything. Lock Haven, yeah, so they win the PSAC. They had 5 champs, Ronnie Perry at 149, Marstellar at 165, who also wins Outstanding Wrestler pretty much all year. Jared Seacrest at 174, Corey Hazel at 184, and Thomas Haines at heavyweight. So, yeah, they win half the weight classes and win the tournament. That was their first title in 17 seasons, if I'm getting this right. But, yeah, I knew they snapped Edinburgh's 6-year streak. Clarion ended up actually taking second ahead of Edinburgh. So we're almost seeing a little bit of a, and this is no disrespect to Edinburgh because they're still a pretty tough team, but there's a little bit of a paradigm shift going on here in the PSAC and with these small Pennsylvania schools where we're seeing.
Good word.
Yeah, the Old Dominion education paid off there.
An old paradigm.
As you heard that word. But yeah, Clarion takes second with 2 champs in Brock Zacharov and Dustin Conti at 197. So, a good thing, honestly, if you think about it, I think, for college wrestling and for just PA wrestling. You got some of these other small schools turning some heads, and I think that's big for recruiting, too. You see these under-the-radar recruits, like we're going to talk to Scott Moore here. You're going to get his interview, talking a little bit about how some of these small schools are picking up on some of these big PA recruits and really develop, or these smaller PA recruits, but really developing them into big-time talents in college. And schools like Clarion and Lock Haven and Edinburgh, historically have always been able to do that. Edinburgh maybe more so as of late, but Lock Haven and Clarion definitely on the rise, as Lock Haven's hashtag would indicate.
Yeah, man, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Great showing for Lock Haven, great showing for Clarion, and Edinburgh. I think all 3 schools wrestled well. Those were the only 3 schools that came home with champs. 5 for Lock Haven, 3 for Edinburgh, 2 for Clarion. So, great showing for those 3 schools, as well as, all the guys that competed. I think with that, good time to roll into the interview with Scott Moore, head coach of Lock Haven. So we'll throw it over to the interview with Scott Moore. After that, we'll come back for to recap or to wrap up this week's podcast with some previews of what's coming up this weekend. So here's Scott Moore. Joining us on the program now, he's the head coach of the Lock Haven Bald Eagles, a former Penn State and UVA great, Franklin High School grad, a true Pennsylvania legend, Scott Moore. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
So you're in your 5th year at Lock Haven, and in your time, it's hard to believe it's been 5 years already. I was actually blown away when I saw that. But, 5 years in, you've cracked the top 25 rankings for the first time, I think, in 15 years. You've really built this program up a long way. And, I know you're not to the level that you guys want to be at in the end, but, what has gone in these first 5 years? What's the process been like building the Lock Haven program up into a top 25 team from where it was when you started?
Well, as you know, there's a lot that goes into, building a program and changing the culture and just kind of, getting what you feel is the perfect program and putting everything into place as far as staffing and getting the type of wrestlers that you want to coach and, finding out, what our advantages are at Lock Haven being a small state school. And it's taken a few years, obviously you're saying this is our 5th year and it's taken a few years to get that perfect formula. And I think we're getting closer every year. And, this year has been special for us for a lot of reasons. And I think we finally got our staff together that works together, that has good chemistry. And we're putting a lot of those pieces to the puzzle together and the competitions, which is something we missed the last couple of years where I thought we had some pretty good guys, but we're just not a lot of consistency and not getting the results week in and week out that we thought we would get. So This year, everything's, coming together, as you mentioned, being ranked in the top 20, top 25, and really starting to see a lot of success from individuals and ultimately as a team. And that's one of the most important things as a coach that I think is moves the program forward is teaching guys how to work together, be supportive as a team. And with that comes individual success and program success. And that's something that over the last couple of weekends, we've seen that in full effect with some tournaments, with dual meets, with PSACs. And, we're starting to reap the rewards of being, not only good partners, good teammates, pushing each other and just, putting our best performance on the mat during competition, not just at practice.
Scott, you talked about changing the culture at Lock Haven. Obviously, being in Pennsylvania, that helps a lot, that it being a hotbed wrestling state, pulling recruits and stuff. But what is it exactly that you kind of look for when you go out recruiting and when you look for kids to bring into your program? What is it that you're looking for in these types of kids that you think can help change the culture of the team?
Yeah, I mean, it's, recruiting's getting more difficult, as you guys know. There's a lot of options out there. There's a lot of distractions, and that's something that we sell is, wrestling and academics are the most important part about this process, and getting to know the people behind the program, getting to know the coaches and the individuals on campuses that are going to help recruits and help guys develop into, what they're looking to accomplish. And for me, I have a pretty good sense of character, and I have a pretty good sense of which kids are truly passionate about being successful. And that's really, I think, the big difference in recruiting and changing the culture of a program is finding kids that have that upbringing, that their parents, when you meet their parents, you can tell right away that these kids are going to be class act. They're going to come in and be loyal and be honest and respectful of the coaching staff. And that's really the main difference right now with our program. We just have guys that understand the process, that want to be extra, that they want to be good in everything that they do. And I think using that instinct on recruiting and really feeling guys out. We're pretty picky throughout the recruiting process. When we look at guys, we kind of look at the whole picture. Obviously, we do home visits, we go to tournaments, we have them on campus, and just doing that full evaluation and making sure that their goals and their actions align with what we want in our program. And that's really the main change. The kids we have now, we have a variety of kids that were, it's really good in high school, and we have kids that maybe only play 7th or 8th in the state, but they're starting to figure out how to work together. And ultimately, to be successful in college, you have to find kids that just have the passion and just want to work and enjoy being part of the program, understanding that it's going to be tough, but also just enjoying the grind. And, at Lock Haven, as any Division I program, we push extra hard. We do a lot of fundraising. We run a lot of events. We reach out to our community and our donors and our alumni and really ask for a lot of support. It's a pretty special place. Has a huge history in Matttown, USA, with 39 All-Americans. Pretty much anybody you talk to in the wrestling world knows where Lock Haven is and has wrestled there or has wrestled a guy from Lock Haven. And, so that's something that we push to our recruits and we push to, our supporters, is that we're trying to rebuild the legacy that was started back in the 70s and 80s. And that's where we're at right now. We're getting really close to, being a top 10 program. We're starting to pick up those recruits that are, state finalists, state champions as juniors, that are ranked in the top 10 in the country. And, not that that's the only thing, but that's a very important part of building, is getting the recruits that can bring it to the next level. So, with all those things coming together, figuring out what our advantages are at Lock Haven, and ultimately it's a small school with a lot of support, and we're finding kids that really enjoy the outdoors, that really enjoy the family environment that Lock Haven brings, and we have some great majors and a lot of things that these guys feel like it's like home to them, and they can come in and perform and cut out the distractions and train to be a national champion to get a great degree from Lock Haven.
Yeah, and to go along with all of the recruiting you guys have done, you've been on the you've been the benefactor, or I guess the beneficiary of a few different transfers, which is all part of the process. Thomas Haines, I believe, started at Ohio State, and now is one of your top guys. And Chance, not just through Oklahoma State, but going through everything that he went through. What have those two guys, not only from a wrestling standpoint, obviously, they were big recruits in high school that came back home to Pennsylvania. What are those two guys like as leaders and as two of the more senior guys on your team that have gone through a lot in their respective careers?
Yeah, I mean, based on their success in high school and, their expectation in college, those guys are really starting to be great team leaders. And, that was something last year that we just lacked a little bit of. We didn't have the experience. We didn't have the guys that really wanted to take charge and lead by example. And, everybody that knows Chance Marstellar knows his story, knows how good of a wrestler he is and how much he loves the sport. And, what's special about him, he's always looking to learn. He's a guy in the room all the time, helping guys out, looking to not only develop himself, but to develop other guys on the team, giving them advice. And, it's been a process with him building the trust and respect of the guys on the team. And, but I think that's kind of come full circle right now. And, he's enjoying, being back in Pennsylvania. I know his family loves having him back in the state, and, his drive and his work ethic and his determination is something that you just can't deny when you put him in a wrestling room and you surround him with the guys we have, the Kyle Shoops and, Ronnie Perry's and Corey Hazels, Jared Sechrets. These guys are just warriors. They come in and they just, they push each other. And, so Chance has done a great job with that. We're excited to have him. It's been a process. As with transfers, that all reaches out to basically your network. A lot of guys ask, well, how do you get these guys to come to Lock Haven? And, I got to attribute that to just being out on the wrestling circuit, to getting to know as many people as possible, to kind of building a solid reputation and just, gaining the trust of these guys, knowing that, hey, man, the big schools didn't work out. And, but there's a home in Pennsylvania and you can still be just as successful. And sometimes, I think more and more that guys are starting to figure out that the most important thing is having that support staff around them that trust them, that believes in them. And, that's similar with Thomas Haines. He's really found a great place here, and he's been just building confidence. The last couple of weekends, he's been just lights out, just finding himself on the wrestling mat. And, like everybody else, whether it's a freshman or a transfer, there's a transitional period that these guys have to understand and finding, their workout partners, finding their coaches that push them. And both of those guys are in that place right now. We have Rob Weichel that works out a lot with Chance and Coach Ryan Wolf, upper weight coach that works a lot with Thomas Haines. So we've been smart as a program, in putting a good staff together and making sure that these guys feel comfortable, and they're not only increasing their wrestling skills, but doing the right things in life and just being good team players and good role models for the younger guys in our program. And, that's a trend that we got to continue to build. And, as these guys come in our program, they got to have people that are pushing them and showing them the ropes because, that to build a great program, it takes a lot of consistency. It takes a lot of, just year in and year out of solid recruiting and retention, and keeping guys in your program for 4 or 5 years, it seems, a little bit harder these days with transfers, with guys not wanting to grind it out. And so those are some of the goals and things that we work towards here at Lock Haven. And, having Chance and Thomas in the room to help with recruiting, to lead by example with workouts, and to ultimately be the guys when the match is on the line, and it comes down to heavyweight, you feel pretty good about sending Thomas Haines out there to win the duel.
Scott, I would say to some degree you guys have surprised people this year. I don't know that a lot of people saw the success that you guys have had so far this year coming. You guys win the PSAC. I think you broke Edinburgh's 6-year streak. You beat Rutgers in the duel. Aside from the guys like Chance and Thomas Haines, you have guys like Clucker kind of coming out of nowhere and turning a lot of heads. Would you say to any degree, are you surprised by kind of the results, or is this something that you saw that you really thought was gonna happen to this point in the season at least?
Well, I mean, you know, as we all have high hopes and high expectations for our programs as head coaches. You know, we know what goes into building the correct lineup, and I think there was some early season changes as far as weights and guys switching around, and we got those changes done a little bit quicker this year than we did last year. Last year we made some changes, and you know, at the end of December we had DJ Fellman dropping to 33 and Adam Mackey to 174, and you know, that was a really good dual meet team for us. But this year we were a little bit smarter, a little quicker to know which guys would have been right at what weights. And Corey Hazel had originally dropped to 174, and then, you know, after the first weekend, you know, knowing that would not be our best dual meet team, we moved him back to 184. And he had a great weekend this past weekend, winning PSACs with a win over Bullsack from Clarion, who beat him last year. So, you know, surprised. Not really. It's just more of a, I think we're finally getting what the work that we've put in, we're finally getting the results that we deserve. And when you put good guys in a room and you have a great coaching staff, and you build that environment around everybody, and that's really where you start seeing success. And for up and down the lineup, you know, we go into a dual meet or a tournament, we know the guys very well inside out as far as what they're good at, their technique. And I think we have a good coaching staff that can, you know, not only evaluate talent, but can break down film and get these guys prepared for whatever the challenge may be, whether it's Rutgers, whether it's a tournament or a conference tournament. The buy-in is unbelievable. It's when, you know, guys start to understand, you know, what it takes, and then they start to, you know, feel that it's starting, you know, a team effort, and you know, they start getting excited about the accomplishments that we can achieve. And so we just kind of reap the benefits of that right now. And you know, as a coach, I'm obviously extremely happy and excited. I think as soon as you get the guys to believe and their confidence at an all-time high, that's when results start to happen. And there's a lot of room for improvement. You know, with our program, we continue to harp that each week, you know, setting your timelines and having a purpose when you're in the room, and continuing to build. And as you guys know, as former wrestlers, it's a lot easier to preach that when you're actually winning and you're seeing the results. So it's a little bit more positivity, you know, coming from a coaching staff, not as much yelling, but more, you know, just encouragement. And it's a lot easier to show up to practice and put in the long hours when you know the guys are buying in and doing the right thing. So, you know, I would be remiss if I say I was surprised, but you know, these guys it's a good group of guys, and if every week or, you know, so we have different guys step up. You know, you mentioned Clucker, best finish at states was eighth place, and you know, he's a top 20 wrestler right now, and he's only getting better. And guys like Jared Seacrest, you know, took sixth in the state, and has a close loss against a Rutgers opponent. Really out wrestled. I mean, just a hammer. Went out there for 7 minutes and wore him out. And then, you know, this weekend winning PSACs. And you know, you see that in the best programs. You see the guys that maybe aren't the big guys on paper that start to step up and win matches they shouldn't. That's when things, you know, get interesting, because you know the hammers on your team. You know the guys that, you know, the Ronnie Perrys and Marstellars, and, you know, at this point, Kyle Shoup. I mean, you know the guys are going to go out there and score a lot of points. And when they start doing it on a consistent basis is when, you know, you can really start getting excited about looking at dual meets and, you know, our schedule that's ahead of us.
So the Rutgers duel, you know, I think that was the first. That result specifically, you know, Tristan kind of talked about it, but that result specifically was one that, you know, headlined a weekend of college wrestling a couple weeks ago. And, you know, one of the things that a lot of people talked about was the atmosphere in your guys' gym. You know, what was the atmosphere like for that dual meet, and what have you guys as a program done to generate the excitement and interest and everything in Lock Haven about Lock Haven wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, and you know, that was something that blew me away too. The environment. I mean, we worked on that duel for a couple of weeks, and as you know, Lock Haven's you know, a smaller school, so a lot of those you know, small details and internal stuff was handled by myself, Coach Carr, Coach Wolf. I mean, we got together with a lot of our student workers, with our student organizations on campus. We got together with the community, with, the youth programs, the Veterans Association. So we pushed for about 2-3 weeks, trying to make this the perfect storm, for Rutgers coming back to the field house. And obviously the whiteout theme is pretty common in athletics. We've never really done it before, but we end up ordering, close to 500 shirts, a couple hundred towels. It was electric. We had a DJ come in from Upstate College, and this guy, he was good. He knew what he was doing. He played the right music. He knew how to frustrate the Rutgers guys, and the fans. And so from start to finish, from the national anthem to the way that was produced with the American flag, and from our tunnel, just all those little things that you see in the big wrestling matches that Lock Haven just doesn't normally do. We put the work in, and I think setting the tone and setting the environment for our guys was big. They're coming out and they're just seeing this environment with 2,500 people. And that was part of the victory for me, knowing that we have that many people show up, knowing that our guys were going to fight their butts off in front of 2,500 people, and then seeing the look, give it to Rutgers coming in and kind of being exposed to that environment. It caught them off guard, and the opportunity to compete against the top 10 program in our home gym, a lot of respect for those guys for coming up and battling us, knowing that, we had a program that was sort of under the radar and putting themselves at risk. And, but that's something that, we got to continue to do as a sport and as a program. And when you create that atmosphere, our guys were, wrestling 2-3 points better than they normally would, because they knew what was on the line, and the build up to the duel. And that's, that's the fun things with a small program. You can circle dates on your schedule and say, hey, this is a big duel. We need to throw every dart we can to get everybody in the stadium and the arena, and put our best foot forward to pull an upset. So, we have that, being it's a smaller school, that we don't wrestle a lot of Big Ten schools. This was something that we had circled on our schedule for a long time. And, it's fun when everything plays out, and the environment was it was out of control. I think from a coach's perspective, from a coach, from a competitor, from the fan base, from the students, it's something that we want to continue to grow. And, we have some big goals left with Edinburgh and Cornell throughout the year. We're going to do the same thing. And, it's not only great for the sport, but it's just fulfilling to see that environment take place in our little gym at Lock Haven, and the result that could come from it.
Scott, you already touched on this a little bit, talking about how, Lock Haven can be one of those places where guys who are maybe a little bit more under the radar can come and really thrive. It made me think about back your college wrestling days at Penn State. Off the top of my head, I thought of guys like Pat Cummins, Doc Vecchio, Aaron Onspa, guys who either didn't place at PA States or had pretty low finishes, at least compared to the guys they were wrestling with on the team in D1 at school like Penn State. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to like throw out there to any guys listening right now. What is it about Lock Haven that you think can really be a haven, if you will, for guys like that who are kind of under the radar to come in and really thrive, kind of like Clucker's doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great examples, in our program over the last couple of years. And, it really comes down to finding the guys that just have that internal drive, that have that passion, that they want to be great, and they understand the sacrifice. And, a lot of that is coaching, a lot of that is environment, and a lot of that is just matching the type of kid that you're looking for. And, as we recruit, we continue to look for kids that you just got to have that feel about them, and I say one of the things that makes a good coach is just having that natural instinct when you meet with somebody, and you can just feel, their interest in being successful. You can just kind of feel their integrity and, what type of people they are. And, as you work through that recruiting process, you get the feel from some kids that this means a lot to them. It's not, hey, I'm just being recruited and, I'm looking for scholarship money. You get the feel from some of these guys that, hey, this is important, and I understand that the smaller things in life. And That's where we've had our success in recruiting, and that's something we sell a lot is, the big schools are great. I mean, you can come in and they can show you all the fancy equipment and the big stadiums and lay out the red carpet, but at the end of the day, you got to feel comfortable. You have to feel confident in your surroundings, whether you're going to class, whether you're meeting with your professors or you're just, you're downtown, just kind of walking around, just, getting a feel for everything. You have to feel comfortable. And I think even more these days, kids are looking for something that just feels right for them. And after all that, the crowd goes home from the football stadium and, the lights are turned off and, your $2 million wrestling facility, it's just you, and you got to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons and that you're surrounding yourself with the right people that have your best interest in mind. And that's where, if you look at our coaching staff, we have a great coaching staff that care about our guys. They're not there to get them to make money, to get paid. They're not there because of they're going to be on Big Ten Network or ESPN. They're there for the right reasons, and that's to develop guys, to build relationships with guys, to help our guys network with our alumni and with businesses, and, trying to progress them into being, successful young adults. And right now, that's what I think special about our program is just the integrity of our coaching staff, the skill set of our coaching staff, and Nate Carr, Rob Weichel, and Ryan Wolf, Austin Miller, guys that, they all have this kind of unique ability about them to develop guys, to get guys to believe in themselves, to get guys to believe in our program. And that's something that, a lot of programs talk about as the success of their coaches, in wrestling terms. But when you really look at it, it comes down to which coaches can connect well with the student athletes, which can understand them and knows what's going to be best for them. And, so those are the things that we really have that support at Lock Haven. We have a huge community support. We have professors. Our president comes to our matches. He emails us. We have, from AD to fundraising to pretty much anybody in the community. They understand what wrestling means to Lock Haven. And you go to some of these bigger schools, and although they're big athletic departments, it's not the same. They do not have the same, buy-in that our program has, that our community has. And so we're going to continue to push those things, that it's about the people you surround yourself with. It's about the community that supports you, and it's about being somewhere that cares and that's going to work with you. And, and that's something else that, I think we've done a good job with is there's a transitional period for everybody, so it's a work in progress. We're not looking to bring the best guys in and run them off if they're not doing the best job the first week or the first month or the first year. That it's a 4 or 5 year process to get the most out of, the guys in the room. And that's where you have those stories that, you get those guys that weren't expected to be starters in college, and now they're wrestling at the national tournament, winning matches, and just building a great brand for your program.
It's awesome stuff, Coach. And we don't want to keep you here too late. So I guess you got anything else for us? I know we've covered a lot here in the last 20, 30 minutes. Anything else that you would want to get out there for kids, parents, just wrestling fans in general, about the Lock Haven program, about what you guys are building?
Well, it's going to be a great season, for the program. We're off to a great start this year. Winning the Black Knight invite, having 4 champions up there, going right into the Rutgers duel, beating 11th ranked program in the country, Big Ten Rutgers. Just seeing the fight, the effort from our guys, the support from our community, leading right into the PSAC tournament, first time in 16, 17 years that Lock Haven's been able to not only win, but really dominate that tournament with 5 champions. If you look at the way, Lock Haven guys wrestle right now, and look at the points we're scoring, 26 of the 32 bouts that we won at PSACs were bonus points. So the mentality of wrestling, the mentality of scoring points, being a great wrestler on top, fully utilizing your skills as a wrestler, that's something that I think we're getting the most out of our guys at Lock Haven. We're developing guys. I think anybody can take the top, ranked kids in the country and make them good college wrestlers, but it takes a different type of coach and different type of program, to bring guys in and develop them, to put the work into them, to buy into them. Even when things aren't going well, you got to continue to believe. And that's really, what we've been able to do the last couple of years is just continue to believe and build and grind. And, I truly, believe that we've got one of the hardest working coaching staffs. We're a very underfunded program, but we continue to get support from our alumni, our donors, businesses, corporate sponsors. We continue to get the support from the wrestling community that helps Lock Haven not only compete at the Division I level, but to be a top 15, eventually top 10 program. So, to all the fans and the alumni and, the people that follow Lock Haven Wrestling, we certainly appreciate it. We know that there's a lot of options and a lot of schools out there that are easier to support. But Lock Haven truly is a special place, with kids that are working day in and day out for the right reasons, with the right goals, with a purpose. And, we're excited to build the brand of Lock Haven Wrestling. And our coaching staff continues to push. I'm sure you guys see more Lock Haven Wrestling stuff on Facebook and Twitter than you thought you'd ever want to see. So we're going to – only so many times you can share this. Yeah, it's like sometimes I'm looking at the phone and I'm like, I can only share this so many times before it's going to get annoying. But as you guys know how big a branding is in athletics and, how big reputation is in athletics. And those are the things that as you grow a program, as you educate your audience, as you engage your audience, you got to continue to promote it and get those special, story pieces, guys that, your Alex Clucker and like a Ronnie Perry who took 7th at States is now, one of the best wrestlers in the country at 149 pounds. But also the stories of redemption, guys like Chance Marstellar. I mean, he's had a long journey, but he's in a place right now where I don't think, a lot of wrestlers have ever been. And that's just a place of complete focus and discipline with one mission, and that's to win a national title for Lock Haven. And, so there's just so many stories and so many interesting pieces with Lock Haven and the history of our program. And, I just invite everybody out there who enjoys Pennsylvania wrestling to really dig deep into learning more about our program, how they can support us, and how they can get up to a dual meet this year and see us continue to rise.
Well, awesome stuff, Coach. Thank you so much for taking the time, man. I know things are busy, especially this time of year with the training phases, and you got kids going through finals. So appreciate the heck out of you taking the time to talk with us.
Hey, thank you guys, man. I appreciate your work.
Hey, anytime, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Scott. You got our support. PA Power's rooting for you.
Hey, thank you.
All right, take it easy, man.
All right, so awesome interview with Coach Scott Moore there. Just to wrap up for this week, let's go through what do we got for this upcoming weekend. Finals are kicking in, so there's not much going on. Remember, these are student athletes. Guys got to go take finals, do that book learning thing. So for Lock Haven, we're going to stick with that theme. They've got 3 duels this weekend. Going to wrestle Wheeling Jesuit, Messiah, and Bloomsburg. Bloomsburg, kind of the matchup in there that I'm looking at could be interesting. It was a close match of PSACs at 133. DJ Failman and Andy Schutz. Schutz, actually, a guy that was my last ever dual meet in Grace Hall. My last ever home dual meet. So that could be
twice this year, if I'm not mistaken. Did they not? I'm pretty sure one of our earlier episodes, I remember you talking about Schutz pulling off an upset for returning national qualifier DJ Gilman, and I know he just beat him again in the semis at PSAC. So I want to say that this will be the 3rd time the two have met.
That could be true. It's definitely the second. I know that for sure. Schutz, I got to give a shout out to my guy Steve Middich. Was one of Schutz's coaches. Was a training partner of mine for some time at Lehigh. So got to throw in that shout out. Another duel that really going to be interesting for a lot of different reasons, but Clarion comes to Pittsburgh Saturday. 41 going to be a great bout. Nick Zanetta, Brock Sackrell, both top 15 guys. Both have been podcast guests, so it's going to be a good one. Battle of the Z's. But they both scrap it up, so I don't think there are going to be many people sleeping. Terrible puns aside. 197, you've got Dustin Conti and Kellen Stout. That'll be another one that'll be a great match. Kellen Stout almost pulled up a huge upset against West Virginia. Took Jake Smith to tiebreakers. And then Pitt Bucknell is Sunday out in Lewisburg, home of the one, the only Nathaniel Brown. That match will also feature a great 141 bout between Nick Zanetta and Tyler Smith. So big weekend for Zanetta, man. He had a great showing in Vegas. We talked to him, even though his results have been good, maybe he hasn't been wrestling quite the way that he had hoped. So going to be a big weekend for him. If he was able to pick up one or both of those wins, would really vault himself. I would say potentially into the top 10, definitely solidifying himself as a top 10, 12 guy. And yeah. So big weekend for Nikki Z. Bloomsburg wrestles University of Virginia on Sunday. That'll be an interesting dual meet. Always good to see the state schools take on, bigger, more prominent programs like a UVA. And then a duel, I think we mentioned
Andy Schutz versus Jack Mueller matchup. Perhaps not that that's necessarily going to be a close match, but Schutz is, like you said, a PA kid, so he'll have his hands full.
Well, and he's a PA kid, and Schutz is dangerous, man. He's got a great mixer, does a lot of different things. He's a kid that can kind of find a lot of ways to stick you, so never out of a match for sure. And then the last dual meet that I think we mentioned last podcast in error, which is my fault because I'm the one that writes the rundowns. But Penn State, Indiana is this Sunday, the 17th. So that'll be a good dual meet. Penn State, I got to believe, looking to pitch a shutout, if they can get through the lower weights. So I think that's about all we got, man, for what's coming up this week. Tristan, before you wrap us up, as always, just got to say, thank you to Coach Scott Moore for coming on. Lock Haven, it's a program, not to overuse their own hashtag, but they really are a program on the rise. Shout out seriously to the Drexel program. Huge result for them, even in a loss. Huge result for them to tie the number 5 team in America. All you guys as listeners that keep sending us questions, we're getting more of them. Love it. Keep them coming. Any chance Tristan and I get to have a little back and forth with each other, it's always fun. So thank you guys for tuning in. Check us out on Twitter, on any form of social media. If you see us around at tournaments, like I said, I was at Ironman this past weekend. Tristan was at the Cumberland Valley Kickoff Classic. If you see us around, say hey. Got any suggestions or, just to talk about the podcast, hit us up. But with that, Tristan, take us out.
Yeah, just to echo what you said, Mason. We really appreciate Scott Moore coming on. I know personally for me, he's one of my childhood idols, one of my favorite guys ever to watch growing up in the sport. Really wanted to actually wrestle for him when he was coaching at UVA. I was really considering going there to wrestle for him. And then a couple years later, really wanted my brother to, once he transferred, to go to Lock Haven. But he's doing huge things with that program, and nothing but good words for Lock Haven and for what Coach Moore's doing. So we really appreciate him coming on. He definitely has our support. And like you said, Mason, with that, that's going to wrap it up for us at the PA Power College Podcast. As always, thanks for dialing in. I'm Tristan Warner. You can find me on Twitter at WarrenTriz. And you can find Mason Beckman on Twitter at Beck_. All your wrestling needs, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at PA Power Wrestle and friend us on Facebook. Until next time, stay classy, wrestling fans.